Tonight on Ukraine Today, killed, wounded, massive destruction. Overnight, Russian forces launched a large-scale attack on Ukraine using drones and ballistic missiles. Tomahawks for Ukraine. In Washington, they seem to have figured out how to mix business with pleasure, force Putin into talks while strengthening Kyiv's position. The fine print of peace. How will a peace plan be signed? And who will actually guarantee that it is followed? Ego and diplomacy. Why did the White House hang a photo of Trump with Putin? All this and more, right now. Hello, I'm Volodymyr Robchun and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get straight to the news. We begin with the situation on the battlefield. Ukraine's defense forces struck strategic targets of the occupiers. Russian oil facilities, ammunition depots and troops concentration areas were hit. It burned bright, it exploded loud. At the same time, the enemy is pulling forces toward the Kramatorsk and Slovyansk directions. More details in the report.
Kind drones visited the Mariupol region. UAVs arrived at the location of Russian occupiers in the village of Nikolske, formerly Volodarske, near the grain elevator. According to Petro Andriushchenko, head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, at night the occupiers were pulling out equipment and transporting the damaged ones to Mariupol.
In recent days, Ukraine's defense forces have carried out a series of strikes on the energy infrastructure of the Russian occupation administration in these territories. These strikes targeted energy facilities in Mariupol, Luhansk, and accordingly, a number of other settlements. As a positive example, we can recall the strike on ammunition depots and fuel and lubricant storage facilities in Sorokino and Sverdlovsk, Luhansk region.
Russians in the Russian Federation did not sleep peacefully last night. In Slavyansk on Kuban, Krasnodar Krai, more than 10 explosions were recorded in different parts of the city. Air defense systems were in operation. Temporary restrictions on arrivals and departures of aircraft were imposed at Krasnodar Airport. Local social media pages report 5 to 7 impacts in different parts of Kursk. Russian forces are planning to increase the intensity of their offensive in the Kramatorsk and Slavyansk directions. This is reported by the military citing intelligence.
At the moment, the main actions of the occupiers are taking place on the flanks of the Slovyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. First and foremost, the pressure is coming from the direction of Siversk and from the direction of Lyman. In the Slovyansk direction, the main fighting is concentrated in the area of Yampol and Platonovka. It should be noted that the main actions of the occupiers are aimed at blocking the logistics of Ukraine's defense forces. This is specifically in the Lyman area.
No matter how much the occupiers pretend to be penguins, Ukrainian defense forces still find them. Against the backdrop of these videos, the statement by the commander-in-chief of the Russian army, Valery Gerasimov, about the capture of Kupiansk, Uzlovoy, seems like yet another clown show.
Kupiansk Uzlovoy has been liberated. The thorough inspection and clearing of city blocks across the city are currently well underway.
Fighters from the 8th Special Operations Regiment cleared out occupiers who had holed up in a destroyed supermarket and a nearby building in the central part of Kupiansk, Kharkiv region. 2 Russian soldiers were eliminated and 2 occupiers were taken prisoner.
Another round of loud statements from the head of the general staff of the occupiers' army, Gerasimov, during his visit to the command post of the Western Group of Forces, claiming that Russian occupation troops have allegedly taken full control of the key railway station Kupiansk-Uzlovy. This statement sparked a wave of criticism even among Russian Z channels. The most critical point to understand is that, at the present moment, there are absolutely no Russian occupation troops currently present in either Kupiansk or Uzlovy, and accordingly, the threat of a further breakthrough in this specific direction has been effectively and substantially minimized for the time being.
And here is a re-educated Russian soldier.
So what are the conditions? Do we need to contact the unit to arrange some kind of exchange?
You don't need to contact anyone, you don't need to get in touch with the unit or find anything out, that's it. Well, I don't want to be exchanged.
Rather than returning to his homeland, he has decided to reside in Ukraine. And fundamentally, he simply wants to exist in peace, rather than go back to die for Putin again.
Over the past 24 hours, Russia has lost at least 690 troops killed and wounded. That brings total Russian losses since the full-scale invasion to 1,200,000 36,570. In addition, during the last day, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 4 Russian armored combat vehicles, 22 artillery systems, and dozens of other pieces of enemy military equipment. This may sound strange, but the way Russia threatens conscripts, mobilized soldiers, and contract troops, combined with the Kremlin's social and economic system, is actually bringing Ukraine closer to victory. Look at what is happening inside the Russian army. Humiliation, torture, lies, and empty promises used to lure people to the front line. And if an occupier survives and tries to return to civilian life, total unemployment is waiting for him there.
If this friend doesn't want to carry out the task, to go there, you understand? You load your rifle, put it to his head and say,
"You have no choice, got it?" The number of mercenaries in the Russian army has surpassed 100,000 according to monitoring channels. In fact, every 7th occupier who came to Ukraine with a weapon is either a foreigner or received Russian citizenship through an expedited process in order to quickly be sent to the slaughter.
Many individuals are unfortunately forced to sign a binding contract through deliberate deception, clever trickery, or, once again, intense psychological pressure. That is to say, in a great number of cases, these migrants simply do not fully understand the specific terms of what they are signing or exactly what kind of dangerous contract they are agreeing to. For instance, some are officially invited for one specific job, such as working at a local shampoo factory. But in reality, it tragically turns out that they are instead sent to fight at the front lines just the same as soldiers.
According to the Telegraph, Russia is luring thousands of migrants into the war through deception, recently using special groups. So-called recruitment agencies hire workers for regular jobs, but later force them to the front lines through threats. According to the publication, in 2025 alone, Russia has sent at least 18,000 citizens from 126 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America to war. More than 3,000 of them have already been killed in combat. Another approximately 700 people are being held as prisoners in Ukraine.
Ultimately, they chose to refrain from signing the contract entirely. They asked about the embassy.
But no one is allowed to contact the embassy. In Donbass, they simply don't function. At the same time, recruitment continues not only from distant countries, but also from Central Asia. Methods of pressure. Russians have been honing these methods on their neighbors.
For a period spanning many consecutive decades, throughout the long and winding course of several generations, and across the vast and enduring stretch of time that has unfolded since the middle of the previous century until this very present moment we are experiencing today.
The main reason why the Russian Ministry of Defense is reaching out to foreigners is the sharp decline in the number of Russians willing to fight. And that's all because with each passing day of the war, there are more and more stories about what is really happening there.
Thousands of appeals, statements, complaints, almost cries of despair have been sent to all sorts of government agencies. But the answer is always the same. There is no new information. Your loved ones are missing.
This is just one of dozens of wives and mothers of soldiers from the Eastern Military District of the Russian Federation who have recorded a collective appeal asking for help to find them, the missing
immediate family members and other close relatives.
In addition to this, one of the occupiers explains where such a large number of missing Russians comes from. Ilya, who spent several months trying to capture Volchansk, said that the dead, Russia simply does not retrieve them from the battlefield and list them as missing in action. This order came from the very top.
At my house, where I was staying not far from the grain elevator we were trying to capture, there are 10 corpses lying there. They are listed as MIA, not KIA. I just want everyone to understand that they've been fucked over, just like me, by the government. They never acknowledge the KIAs there. Never. Is there anyone there who has been officially listed as KIA? What happens is they record him as MIA because it's easier for them to do that so they don't have to pay you any money.
So millions of rubles never reach those who send their relatives to war, hoping for compensation or a new Lada Kalina. Active pressure due to a shortage of personnel has also started to be applied to Russian army conscripts. Abuse and threats. Many of these recent high school graduates simply can't take it.
About 5 people my age. A lot of people from the Tula region have died. When they started to go in, some just went on their own, like, how many of us are going to the concert? Basically, they were sent abroad. Or at the border on the front line, there are still things flying around there too. About 3 people were wounded.
Oleg also spoke about the death of his friend who was forced to sign a contract despite not having parents and having a younger sister. The sister, after he died, his sister was sent to an orphanage.
His sister was left behind. She's in the orphanage now, living with someone.
As the soldiers say, even getting sent to the hospital is a luxury that not everyone can afford. For example, soldiers from the 49th Combined Arms Army said they literally ate nails just to somehow escape the lawlessness of the local command. In another unit, one of the soldiers, Andrei Sharikov, recently recorded a video where he also said that his commanders simply abused him, demanded money from him, and even threatened to shoot him. Because of this, the guy nearly lost his mind.
According to Sharikov, he is currently being held on the territory of the 71st Brigade and is being prepared for loading and sending to the combat zone. At the same time, he claims that he had previously officially reported his severe mental condition and the urgent need for medical assistance. I
am mentally unwell. I want to see a psychologist. I'm close to suicide, and I asked to be sent for rehabilitation to a psychologist because I am a burden and mentally unwell.
But even those who miraculously manage to survive this meat grinder and return home are not to be envied. For example, just recently, a number of Russian media outlets published statistics showing that more than 250,000 Russians who returned from the so-called special military operation cannot find work. People are simply afraid of them because of their recent past. The authorities immediately intervened and the publications were edited. But that didn't help to hide the truth. Putin's killers, even in Putin's Russia, are needed by no one.
Last night, the occupiers attacked Ukraine with drones and ballistic missiles. There are killed and wounded. Homes and cars were destroyed. In Kyiv, the Russian attack caused fires. Blast waves damaged windows and roofs of apartment buildings. In the Kyiv region, a high-rise building was hit. 2 people were killed. 4 others, including children, were injured. A 4-year-old girl was carried out of the burning building by a neighbor, Radio Liberty war correspondent Marian Kushnir. Sadly, the girl's mother and stepfather were killed, as the fire spread extremely fast after the drone strike. The rescued child is now with her father and older brother. In Zaporizhia, a strike hit the yard of an apartment building. More than 100 apartments and 20 cars were damaged. 2 people were wounded. In Odessa, the occupiers attacked residential buildings and a monastery. 3 people were injured. In Kryvyi Rih, Russian forces struck an infrastructure facility. 2 people were wounded. Today, flags are lowered at railway stations across the country. This is in memory of the passengers killed yesterday by a Russian strike on a train in the Kharkiv region. At the site of the attack, the bodies of 4 victims and fragments of remains were found. The occupiers are increasing the accuracy of their drone attacks. They are doing this using Starlink. At the same time, Russia is trying to create its own version of the American system. All the details next.
In this footage, we see the Russian drone Molnia that we already know, but there's something unusual about this UAV, a Starlink terminal mounted right on its body. At the beginning of December, the Russians started attaching satellite communication modems to their drones. Electronic warfare systems don't affect these drones, but bypassing EW is far from the only reason for this upgrade to Russian UAVs.
They're looking for solutions that could enhance the capabilities of their strike assets. And it's specifically the Starlink terminals that make this possible, because they provide a guaranteed high-quality communication channel. Of course, there is some delay. Obviously, this significantly increases the cost of the strike systems, but we understand that it's still much cheaper than using, for example, missiles like the Kh-101 or Iskander.
The arsenal of drones that Russia is strengthening in this way is expanding. These are already images of the BM-35 drone to which a Starlink terminal has been attached. Such a UAV has probably already reached Dnipro and even Kyiv. This Russian technology has also made its way to the Shaheds. The manually operated drones were flying almost at ground level so that they wouldn't be detected by radar. According to radio technology specialist and advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Serhiy Flesha-Beskidny, one of these Shaheds struck helicopters. This method of so-called drone optimization is relatively new, but the Kremlin understands that Ukraine will soon find a way to counter such UAVs. But Russia is not planning to abandon the idea of strengthening its strike capabilities with satellite communications, so it is working on creating its own domestic version of Starlink.
The enemy is looking for a solution to create its own communication system that will allow it to operate in the same mode. Therefore, these intentions are a direct attempt to replace the existing Starlink with their own communication system, which would allow them to control it and use it independently, without any complications related to, for example, sanctions or other issues that Russians face when purchasing Starlink terminals.
But so far, the Russians have not managed to surpass or even catch up with Elon Musk. The launch of the Russian Starlink analog has failed in Russia.
As people say in our country, it would be funny if it weren't so sad.
According to Russian media, the launch of the first batch of low-orbit broadband internet satellites has been postponed indefinitely, as the authorities have failed to realize their ambitious plans.
According to two sources in the space industry, the postponement of the launch of the first 16 satellites to 2026 may be due to the fact that the required number of satellites has still not been assembled. For their part, the Bureau 1440 stated that the company is carrying out work according to the scheduled deadlines and promised to provide updates on the project's progress as each stage is completed. Exact launch dates and other sensitive information are not subject to disclosure.
How the Kremlin plans to proceed with its deployment of 156 satellites in 2026 remains unclear.
We will provide our own answer to Starlink with the Dawn project by the 1440 Bureau.
It's been more than half a year since work on the project began in May 2025, and out of the promised satellites, there are exactly 0 in orbit.
If they work very hard, in any case, they might be able to create some kind of similar system. But let's remember that even in the Soviet Union there were problems, significant problems specifically with satellite systems that could provide the capabilities, for example, that American satellites offer. That's why, without a doubt, there are plenty of people eager to siphon off Russian money, who are essentially pitching various projects that, even at the planning stage, can already be called unsuccessful. But all of this is packaged nicely and sold to the Kremlin leadership.
The aerospace company that took on the development of a Starlink analog actually began working on creating Russian satellite communications even earlier. In 2023 and 2024, the Bureau 1440 began testing technologies. There were even experimental missions, as a result of which 6 devices were launched. But this is not what Putin expected.
The creation of powerful satellite constellations is intended to ensure high-quality navigation and communications, including satellite data transmission.
Now we're talking about the commercial aspect scaling and government funding. Putin allocated almost $1.5 billion for the domestic Starlink. And that's not surprising, since the bunker dictator really likes Elon Musk's inventions as well as Musk himself.
As for Elon Musk's private business, he is undoubtedly an outstanding person. That must be acknowledged.
In 2025, the company planned to launch 150 to 180 satellites per year. By 2035, the constellation is supposed to include more than 900 satellites. Under the Kremlin's import substitution policy, this is not just an unrealistic goal, but, according to military political analyst Alexander Kovalenko, borders on schizoid absurdity.
At the time this statement was made, there was already a sense of sham in the story of the Rasvet project. All the more so since the 1440 Bureau in 2023 carried out the launches of the first 6 test Rasvet satellites, which provided data transfer speeds of up to 12 megabits per second with a latency of up to 41 milliseconds. But the critical and complex nuance with these satellites is that they were assembled predominantly and extensively from Western components, the supply of which is now completely and strictly prohibited to Russia due to international trade sanctions and restrictions.
It is possible that the Russian Federation might ask for help from its partners and use Iranian and Chinese technologies, but for that to happen, Russia would have to want its own Starlink more than it wants to steal money. Let us explain now. Back in 2018, the then head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, had already promised Putin a Starlink made in Russia, but the ambitious Sphere project turned into an equally ambitious budget siphoning scheme. At that time, the project was estimated at $60 billion.
The exploration of outer space should become a much more significant factor in our overall national growth and development.
The new project, although cheaper, faces even more problems in its creation, but Putin is once again being promised another domestic innovation.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now's a good moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video and share it. Please do it. Thank you. And glory to Ukraine. Kyiv will sign a 20-point peace plan with Washington. The United States will separately sign a document with Russia. This was announced by Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. According to him, the plan also includes the ratification of security guarantees, including in the US Congress. At the same time, the minister stressed that negotiations are still ongoing. There are a lot of questions. What exactly are these 20 points about? What do they include? Who will monitor the implementation? What responsibility will follow if the terms are violated? And most importantly, when will the signing take place? I'll keep you updated. Meanwhile, Washington seems to have found a way to combine business with pleasure, or the useful with the effective. Force Putin into negotiations and significantly strengthen Kyiv's position. One of the ideas being discussed is providing Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles. All the details next.
Tomahawks for the armed forces of Ukraine, a new United States diplomatic strategy to exert significant pressure upon the Kremlin leadership. Washington is discussing a plan to strike deep inside Russia to force Putin to make peace.
I highly doubt that I can contribute any significant new information here.
A small group of Ukraine's supporters in Washington claims that the only way to force the Russian dictator to come to the negotiating table is to significantly strengthen Kyiv's position, and this can be done with Tomahawk missiles.
As last year's experience has shown, only as soon as the United States even mentioned Tomahawk missiles, Putin immediately began to display the highest level of constructiveness, or rather a constructive attitude, and tried in every possible way to show that he wanted peace. As soon as Putin realized that Ukraine had no chance of getting any Tomahawk missiles, that was it. After that, the campaign to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure and the terrorism against Ukrainian cities began.
At the center of this initiative is Dan Rice, president of the American University in Kyiv and former special advisor to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, who held a meeting with the US Secretary of Defense, according to Kyiv Post.
Putin only responds to strength. If he does not agree to peace, then in my opinion, there is a high likelihood that President Trump will approve the use of Tomahawks.
Rice refused to disclose the details of the meeting, calling most of the conversation confidential, but did reveal what he had proposed. According to him, he directly asked the Secretary of Defense to provide Ukraine with Tomahawks, even if it was just a small, undisclosed number.
Even if we are given 20, 30 or 50 missiles, it won't make much of a difference. We need 100 missiles per month to have at least some kind of parity with the Russian Federation. In the latest figures, the Russians launch about 300 different missiles at Ukraine every month. So we need to launch at least as many, preferably more. Only then can we really put pressure on the Russian Federation.
Ukraine tried to obtain these missiles from the US back during Biden's term, but up to now Tomahawks have still not been supplied to the Ukrainian army.
It is believed, again, we don't know for sure, but rumor has it online, that the United States can produce about 100 missiles a year. 100 missiles per year. So for the average person, it might seem like, well, 100, that sounds like a lot. 100 missiles, that's a lot, right? Let's look at it from another angle. The cost of each missile, according to various estimates, could be $2 million per missile, or $4 million, as for example, when the Americans once sold them to Japan. So for themselves, it's a little over 2 million, but for the Japanese, it was 4.25 million per missile. So these are large sums. It would seem that if money isn't the issue, then the problem lies in the quantity.
That's why whether Trump will approve the supply of Tomahawks remains an open question. While some officials believe that American missiles could indeed become a lever of influence on Russia during negotiations, others fear that the transfer of Tomahawks could, on the contrary, undermine diplomatic efforts.
If the United States had clearly stated that, in the event Russia destroyed Ukraine's energy infrastructure, Ukraine would receive Tomahawk missiles, I guarantee you that nothing like what is happening now would have occurred. But the United States has a different approach. They are trying to persuade Putin in a friendly way to maintain good relations with him and everything along those lines. Therefore, to be honest, I don't believe at all that the United States would give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles under Trump.
Let us recall that American Tomahawk cruise missiles are capable of storing up to 15 pre-programmed targets in memory and can change their destination point directly in flight, as well as carrying either nuclear or conventional warheads.
And finally, about diplomacy and ego, or maybe about ego and diplomacy. The White House has hung a photo of Trump with Putin. It was taken in Alaska in August 2025. You can see it in different ways. For example, Trump showing trophies, like a hunter displaying photos of captured prey. He pulled Putin out of his safe bunker and onto American soil. Just didn't shoot. Or you can see it as an interesting approach to interior design. You know how it is. Some people prefer gold. Some are ready to look at Putin, and some manage to combine both. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and see you next time.